Hi guys, this is going to be the tutorial, or well, kind of an experimental tutorial as well, using this super chunky yarn. I made a afghan with similar yarn as well a long time ago called the Glover Stitch baby afghan, and I didn't do a lot of cutting. So I had a lady on Facebook ask me if this stuff fuzzes out a lot, and all I had made at that time was that Glover Stitch afghan, and I told her that it didn't, because she'd heard it was a big problem. But then I decided I would go ahead and cut it a lot to make these little flowers, because you make these individual flowers and then you cut the yarn. Cutting the yarn definitely made this a different experience this time using this kind of yarn. So I'm going to give you some tips on using this and what to look out for and everything. So I hope that you'll enjoy the tutorial. So for this project I used a 6mm hook, or a size J hook for the US, and I used size 6 super bulky yarn. But all the fuzzy talk aside, the reason why I made this is because the puff flower, it really comes out beautiful. And this particular yarn also has this reflective kind of look to it, where if you catch it in the right light, it's just has this amazing texture to it. If you're going to do something like this, it needs to be something that's kind of small, something that you could use like a table runner. That's what I'm going to use mine for. I was thinking about using it for an afghan, but there's no way it can be used as an afghan if you cut this kind of chunky yarn, because it leaves all these little fuzz all over the place. So I had thought about just not, like I said, I thought about not even showing this tutorial at all, because there's no way that I can use it like that. But I thought, well, since I did learn from the experiment of it, and I did end up turning it into an experiment. Okay, sorry for the shaky camera if it shakes too much, but I wanted to show you, this is the test piece. And I started on the left side, that you can see is much wider, and it gets, you know, skinnier as it goes in, and that's because I was tightening it as I went. As you can see here, the ones in between are not as tight, but they get tighter and tighter and tighter as I go through, and it makes even more of a solid piece. And then at the end I tried to get a little tighter, just to test how tight you can get this before it warps. And on this side you can see this side is too tight, and I left this open because I want to show you how to tie these things together. But anyway, you can see that there is a limit. I would say not too loose and definitely not too tight, because it'll warp it on the end. You got to find that happy balance in between and try to be as consistent as you can. I want to point out the width of the flower is 8 centimeters or 3 inches wide. Okay, to begin, you want to chain 4, and you will slip stitch in that first chain that you did to form a ring. Now you want to chain 1, and using the center ring you want to put 12 single crochets into that center ring. Okay, once you've gotten your 12 single crochets, slip stitch in that beginning stitch to finish your, I guess that's row 1. So for row 2, you want to chain 3, and then you're going to yarn over and go into that very first stitch where you slip stitched, and you're going to pull up a loop. Then yarn over, go into that same stitch and pull up a loop. Then you're going to yarn over, go into the next stitch and pull up a loop. Then yarn over, go into that same stitch you just went into and pull up a loop. You should have 9 loops on your hook. So you want to yarn over, pull through all those 9 loops, chain 3, going in again to that same stitch, slip stitch in that stitch. And then you'll slip stitch in the next stitch. So you'll be slip stitching in the same stitch and then slip stitching in the very next stitch, which will bring us up to start our next petal, where we'll chain 3, and again in that same stitch that we chained 3 from, you'll yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and then you'll pull it up just a little bit. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and pull that up a little bit. You only do that twice in each stitch. So you did twice here, now you're going to go to the stitch to the side and pull up a loop. Pull it up a little bit, yarn over, go into that same stitch again one more time, pull it up, 9 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 9 loops, chain 3. Again, you will slip stitch in that same stitch you were just using, and then slip stitch in that stitch beside it as well. And then again, you will chain 3. Okay, so I just did my last puff, did my chain 3 that comes after it, slip stitch. Instead of slip stitching after this very last puff inside the same stitch that we were using, I want you to go into this little stitch to the side where we first began our first stitch. By using this stitch, it kind of closes the flower there a little bit more, closes the space a little bit more. Then you'll cut your yarn, just tighten that up. And that's how you make your first flower. Your first flower will always be complete, and then you'll start your next one same exact way. And since you're going to be connecting with 2, I recommend at least getting, because once you connect it, then you're connected, and later on when your piece grows, once you connect it to your main piece, then it adds weight. So you want to make as many petals as you can before you have to do your first connection, and you want to at least have your very last petal not connected to anything. So you always want to stop a little bit ahead, and I'll show you the next one just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I got my 3 petals done, just like I did here. Now I'm ready to do my connections, and you're going to be connecting it from this side, which is the front side, and that's the one that has the chain showing. The actual puff stitch part of it shows up in the back. So this is what you see on that flower fabric that I showed you that I'm going to be using for a table runner. That's the puff part of the stitch. This is the front part of the stitch, but it's actually the bottom part of the material, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so we have our 3 petals. We want to do our connection with the 4th, because we need to at least have 2 that we connect. So we have 1, 2, 3 petals done. Then we'll connect with the next 2, and that'll leave us the last petal to just finish. You don't want to do a connection on your last petal. So I'm going to start my flower, so I'll chain 3. I'm starting my flower as normal. You want to get to that point where you pull through all of your loops, and this is the part we'll do our connection. You want to grab, I guess I'm going to use these 2, so decide on the 2 you want to use. Grab up the first one. You're going to have the puff side facing you. Easily see the holes. There's a chain space on this side, and this is the hole that was created when you pulled all your stitches together. It's called the cluster hole here, and then this is the chain going down this side. I want you to go into that cluster hole, and puff side showing here, inside the cluster hole, and come out through the chain. And then grab your piece, right? Get your piece comfortable first. The yarn is behind my hook like this. You're going to go into that cluster hole and come out the chain 3, and then just grab up the yarn, and you'll slip stitch through that cluster hole first, and then through the chain on your loop. And then you will complete your heart as usual, your puff as usual, by chaining 3 and slip stitching. So do that now. You want to chain 3, you can just drop the other flower, go back to your flower now, and you'll slip stitch in that same stitch you always use to finish off your puff. Then slip stitch in the next stitch to get ready to start your next petal. Chain 3, yarn over, you'll do your first stitch with the puff, and then your second one, just like we've been doing this whole time. Yarn through all 9 loops, and then you're going to find the puff side showing. Go to the next petal over, make sure that your yarn is behind your hook, insert your hook into that puff cluster stitch part, come out the chain 3 on the side here, and then yarn over and slip stitch. First do that puff and then do the chain on your hook. Then you'll chain 3, then drop that other flower, and now you're focusing on your main flower again. You'll slip stitch in that same place where you did your puff, and then again you'll go to the next stitch to start your next puff stitch, which is going to be not a connection one for me, because like I said, I like the last one to not be a connection. That way I can focus more on getting this last one, not in this one, remember, not in the first one, but this little stitch in between here kind of closes that area up. Then chain 1, cut your yarn, and then pull it tight. And that's how you have, and you will connect 10 flowers in a row, or however long you want to make your material. Okay, when you've done your row of flowers and you're ready to connect the next one, I go from, since you're only making one connection, which is the very next connection, just the bottom one here, you should have 2 on this side and 1 on the top. So you're only connecting to the bottom one here. And you want to at least make 5 out of the 6 petals. You want to connect it on the 5th, I should say. I have 4 complete petals. I'm going to connect it on the 5th, which leaves my 6th open so that I can close it the way I like. So I'm on my 5th petal, and I just chained 3. Now I'm doing the puff part of my flower petal. And again, you'll pull through all. This tutorial yarn is so old. So I'll pull through all, and then now I'm ready to do my connection. So I'm going to find that one up here, pick it up. You'll again be going in through the puff connection, and then out your chain 3 and slip stitch. Then you'll chain 3 and continue your petal, slip stitching in that very last stitch. Then you'll slip stitch in the next stitch, and then just finish your last petal. Pull through all, chain 3, and again you'll be using the stitch on the side to finish. And then you'll have your next connection. So I'm going to get my next flower then, and you're going to have a connection on 3 points, and then you'll connect every flower down your row the exact same way I'm about to show you how to do this one. And every new row you'll always start like this, and then you'll always do the next flower that way, and then you'll continue that way, and then that'll be the repeat. So remember where you're on the video here, because this is the part you'll probably want to come back to. Okay, I made my next flower, and I have 2 petals completed, and I'm on my 3rd petal. And this is when I want to connect it to here, to this petal. And then I will do my next petal, connect it to this petal. And then I will do my next petal and connect it to the single one down here. And then I will finish my last petal and leave it, not connected to anything like I usually do. So you want to stop after you have 2 complete petals and the 3rd one ready to be connected. And I'm going to turn my piece here. Remember, you're going in through 2 this time, so I'm going to go in through this one first and then this one, because I'm right-handed. So you're going to grab up that cluster part and then come out the chain like you've been doing, and then pull through both of those. Chain 3, then you'll slip stitch in the next stitch to start your next flower. And at this point, you're going to lay it down if you need to. I need to grab this petal. Remember, yarn behind your hook. It's behind, not in front of. Go into the cluster, come out of the chain, and then slip stitch. Chain 3, go back to your flower again, slip stitch in that same stitch you were doing your puff there, then slip stitch in the next stitch, chain 3, get your next petal started, and now you want to be connecting to the bottom petal of this one, so we're going to go ahead and grab it up, go into the puff and slip stitch and do our chain, and then we're back on our flower again where we can finish. Then you'll slip stitch in the next stitch to start your final petal on this side. Then you'll chain 3 and finish this one by slip stitching in that center stitch in between. And then you'll be repeating that for all of your flowers down the way. And this is how I connected all of my flowers. I did 10 flowers up this way and 10 flowers down this way. But I also had a scarf that I made that I did 3 rows of flowers and then went down. It's called the puff flower scarf or something like that. I'll share a picture. Anyway, and you'll connect all your flowers like that. Afterwards, I had a piece of fabric that had nothing but these holes in it. And by the way, you're working from this side. The puff flower is on the back side. So you're going to be connecting it, and it's going to be looking like this. Don't think it's weird when it doesn't look like that. That's the back side. So anyway, I also did my connections on the back side. I just got a little bit of this string, and I used a 6mm hook or size J hook for the US. So with your 6mm hook, we're still using that, though I did move to a 5mm hook when I was hiding my tails because it made it so much easier. So in each flower here, you can see from the back, the tops of the flowers have this, like the chain part of it. So it's basically the chain 3s connected. There's the puff part of the stitch, and then you'll go down with the chain 3. So you chain 3, go up, do the puff stitch, and then chain 3, bring you back down. So you have this surrounding of chains going around each little area puff. And I was using just those chains and running a piece of string through them. So I would take a piece, cut it, sorry for the noise, and then I would just go in through those chain pieces on each of my flowers. I think I must have used a much bigger piece, but I don't remember. So I'll go through here, and then you can start from here. Go through that chain, go through this chain 3, this chain 3. And then pulling those through, because you just need something to be able to grab a hold of them. I'm going to go through these 2 chain 3s as well. Sorry for the honking outside. Okay, so now that I have, let me get a little closer for you here. Now that I have them through, you can better see all my chain 3s are gathered. I hope you can see. It's very difficult, I know. But once you have them all connected, all the chain 3s, you can kind of pull them tight like that. But I recommend, since you can pull it too tight, is that you pull it, you lay it flat, pound it a little bit, and then tie your knot. And I'm tying my knots, by the way, on the on the front side, because remember, you want your back side to be what shows. So you want that pretty side. So what I did is I just tied a few knots in it like that. And as you can see, it's already, pieces are coming off. And then you can hide your tails. And I used, like I said, a 5mm, and I would just go through the center of your flower. And I'll get my hook and show you real quick. Is that 5? Yeah, that's 5.5. There we go, this is 5. And what I did is I would just go through the center stitches of the flower like this, and I would grab my tails and just pull them through there. Once they're in there, pull them a little bit, because you don't want to cut them too tight and then they just pull. And then you can get those ends and cut them. And that's how you can go through and hide all your tails, and you'll have quite a bit of tails that you'll need to hide. And while you hide it, you are going to get fuzzy. So it's one of those projects that I started and realized, okay, this is going to be a mess. I don't know if anybody would even want to make something like this because it's such an issue, but it's so pretty. So sometimes we labor for pieces when they're very pretty. It's hard to show that on camera, but I'm doing my best, and I'm going to go in left-handed. Usually I just pick up the whole thing and just turn it, but since this is camera, and it doesn't matter, you can go through this way if it's more comfortable, go this way, just however you can get it under that chain 3. You just need to pick up those chain 3s. And then I usually have a little loose here, a little bit of loose on either side of it, because it helps it when you pull it through. I've done the hiding of a lot of tails with this material as of late. Okay, so now you got it on both sides again, and again you want to pull them, and then you can already see how it's coming up. Just pat it, pull a little bit, pat it, just find where it, as tight as you can get it, where it doesn't make it bulk, and then you'll again want to tie a couple of knots there, and then get your smaller 5mm hook, and then you can go into whatever flower you feel comfortable with going into. I'm just going to go down this one, and then also loosely pull that in there. Remember, this front side you're working with is actually going to be the bottom of the material at the end, because you're going to be showing the other side, this side. See how it reflects and everything? It's so pretty. I love this kind of yarn, but I don't like the fuzziness. But anyway, because during my test I was testing my limits on how much I can tighten this yarn. It's kind of wider in some areas. Let me back up. I think I'm going to make a video to show you just how I tightened, so that you can see how it changed the look of it from how tight I did it here to how tight I did it here. So you can find that I found by patting it and just letting it be, you know, itself was good, because it made this whole area here. But then I pushed the limits just to see how tight I could get it and if it would affect it. And to be honest, if you just want to do that on the outer row, it kind of creates this like ruffle effect on the end. So maybe just on these last ones, this last row of tightening all the way around, you can do a little bit tighter. Maybe just on one side here and then on this side. So you have 2 ruffle sides, and then the middle can be flat. Anyway, it's an idea. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial and you learned something about using this super chunky yarn, then please leave a like and share this video and comment down below. It helps me out so much. And if you guys want to get notified whenever I release a new tutorial, you can click on that little bell button next to the subscribe button on my main YouTube page, and click on all notifications, and you'll always be notified whenever I release a new tutorial or something on my channel. I have a couple of groups on Facebook, one called Crochet Zone Public, which is a lot of other designers will also share what's coming out new with them. And I also have more of a private group, if you prefer that, and it's called Crochet for the Masses. I also have a community on Pinterest where I share, as long as other designers, free crochet pattern links. So if you're on Pinterest, that's a great source for you to find spam-free links to free crochet patterns. Also, I have an email list. So if you want to be notified by email, you can go down below and find the link, and you can click that and sign up for my email and always be notified that way. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching.